Hello, happy people, and welcome to your Moment of Zed, the YouTube channel dedicated to the most beautiful car in the world, the BMW Z3, or as the folks in Port Lincoln call it, the Z3. I'm Mark, and today we're going to deal with another issue that cropped up on one of my road trips to, guess where? A loose fog light. I'm going to try and repair it without replacing it because it still lights up, just have a minor problem with it. So we'll take a look, see if we can do that. And we'll get right to it because we don't have a Zed of the Week, unfortunately. If you'd like to be featured on Zed of the Week in future episodes, please take a look down below in the description for instructions as to how to do that. So let's jump right in. Okay, so we've got the car up on Rhino ramps for no other reason other than a little bit easier access and a little bit easier for filming. You could easily do this on the ground as well. And the issue is, on a drive to Ohio, my passenger side fog light came loose. And hard to see, but it just rattles around inside the holder. So we're going to go ahead and take that apart and see if we can fix it. Okay, so first thing first, we have one of our blue nylon tools from the Poraxy kit, which I reviewed a while ago on the channel. Link in the description. And all we have to do is get it behind this plastic piece, pry outward, and it just kind of snaps right out. You can see it's held in by several clips that fit into the various holes here behind. Okay, once you've removed the black plastic cover, you're going to find that your fog light is simply held in by two bolts. And in between them is a small screw. Now that screw doesn't hold it in. It's actually to adjust the angle of your fog light once you've installed it. And the problem with my fog light is that the plastic tabs that those bolts hold onto are broken off the fog light itself. And what I'm going to attempt to do is pull those bolts out and reattach the tabs to the fog light. That way I can avoid buying a new fog light. On the other side, basically you just have a small plastic post that goes into a hole, which is right there, kind of hard to see. Goes into a hole on the outer corner of the fog light right there. And that just slides in, and then you put the bolts on if the tabs were attached to the fog light, which they're not. So we're going to attempt to do that and save us the cost of buying a new fog light. So the bolts themselves are 8mm, and as you can see, I've removed one, and there's a small metal clip to back up the plastic is what you're actually screwing into, and the bolts themselves are just little like 1/2 or 3/4 inch self tappers. And there's my first broken tab. So I just got to make sure I remember that that is the bottom one. And then we'll go ahead and take out the top. Okay, so the fog light itself, as far as the electrical connection goes, is very straightforward. You have one connection that has two clips. And again, kind of hard to see with today's lighting. But there's just two squeeze clips towards the back side of this connector, and if you just go ahead and squeeze them together and wiggle it out a little bit, it will it'll pop right out for you. So that's nice and easy. And two-prong connection, and again you've got tabs on the connector to line it up when we put it back in. So that was very, very easy, even though I'm sure it hasn't been disconnected in 20 plus years. So while we've got the fog light out, we might as well take advantage of that and take a look at some other issues you might have with the fog light. And probably the most common one would be that your bulb burned out. So let's go ahead and pull the bulb out of this, even though mine's fine. On the side there is a clip which simply flips up, and that releases kind of the clam shell design, and the other side's hinged with 2 tabs, 2 slots, and then you can see that you have the connector side, the back side, and then the wires going to the bulb. And to pull that bulb out, it's also another metal clip. So to take the bulb out, you have another metal clip, and basically just squeeze it, and it makes cute noise and will pop up out of your way. And you can go ahead and, with a little bit of difficulty, go ahead and pull that bulb out. And now this bulb is an H7 bulb, and that can be had in Hella brand, which is a real good brand, for about $6 on Amazon, and I'll put that link in the description. But again, mine is fine, so I'm just going to go ahead and put that back in, button her back up, and then we're going to go ahead and epoxy those tabs. All right, so equipment we're going to be using today is pretty simple. Our epoxy to try and put those plastic tabs back onto the light is going to be a Loctite EA 9460, which is a little bit higher grade epoxy than I usually use. Borrowed from my neighbor Pat at Buell 109. Check out the link for his channel. This is about $20 to $25 for the small tube, and it's a 2-part epoxy like any other, a black side and a white side, and it'll come out gray. Now that's attached to an applicator tip, so you get a little more accurate coverage of where you want to put the epoxy. Those are about $2 each. You get a dozen for around $25, $26 on Amazon. All this will be linked in the description. And I've also borrowed his manual applicator gun. This is a little bit more expensive. This is about $65 on Amazon. So once again, thank you, Pat, as always. Now, of course, if you don't want to go that high end, you could always use a different epoxy like the one I used on the glove box project, which is a JB Clear Weld quick setting epoxy. This is the tube I had left over from last year's glove box project. Unfortunately, it hardened up inside the tube, so I couldn't use it, but it's certainly something you could go with. It's still working on my dash parts, so also a good product and significantly cheaper. I'll put the link to that in the description as well. All right, so I've put the Foglight back together, and we're gonna go ahead and rig up our epoxy gun. So pretty simple. Pull the plungers back and insert the tube into the slot, lock it in, and move it up till it touches the plungers inside the tubes. And this is pretty simple. To change out the tip, just counterclockwise undo the old one. I'm going to squeeze just a little bit of this out into a paper towel just to make sure it's flowing. Clean that up. Go ahead and put the new tip on. Lock that in, and then we're good to go. We're just going to squeeze it out onto the tab, and this is going to be, these tabs are, they fit only a certain way, and this is the only way it's going to work. Otherwise, I'll have to buy new ones. Now, if you don't want to go through this trouble, if you want to just go ahead and buy a new Foglight enclosure, I will go ahead and put some links into the description so you can do that. You make your life a little easier. There's some used ones on eBay for like $30, $35. A new OEM one's gonna run you quite a bit more. And be careful, because some of the ones you can order come without bulbs, but again, that bulb is like $6 on Amazon. And as I said, I'll have that link in the description as well. So we're going to go ahead and basically I'm just going to squeeze out some epoxy on this first one and go from there. So here we go. So we're going to do the bottom one first. And again, just going to squeeze the gun using the trigger. And we'll start seeing that flow through the tip. And you actually have to give it some pretty good pressure on this to get it to come out. And we're going to do the bottom one first. And what I always find with most epoxies and glues like this is kind of a little dab will do ya. Less is more, and this kind of comes out as described by my buddy Pat, almost like a creamy peanut butter type. And again, no big secret about how to epoxy anything. I'm going to hold this tab here until it gets a reasonable cure, and then actually we're going to leave it overnight to cure completely. Supposedly takes 6 to 8 hours, but again, overnight's better. So we're just going to go ahead and I will hold this in place for a while and then do the top one and let it cure overnight. There's what it turned out to be. I got a little sloppy on the bottom one here. And I added a little bit to the back of the tabs just to reinforce it. This dries almost like a weld. It almost looks like a weld. But both tabs are in position, and you can kind of see the grayish epoxy there where the break happened. So I'm going to let those cure overnight, and we'll reinstall it in the morning. Okay, so it's the next day, and we've had a 24-hour cure on our tabs, and look just like they did yesterday. But again, I'm not going to put a ton of pressure on these, and not so much that I'm worried about the epoxy, which feels really solid, but I'm more worried about breaking the tabs just at a higher part. But moving them a bit, they feel nice and solid, and they feel like they're aligned. They look like they're aligned properly. So we're just going to go ahead and reinstall, and we'll see how they go. Okay, reinstall on our Foglights, just going to be the reverse of taking it apart. Go ahead and find your electrical connector and clip it onto the light. Make sure it clicks in. Then, hard to see, but the post on the side is going to slide into that hole on the outboard side of the Foglight enclosure, and bring the tabs to the holes. Go ahead and reinstall your 8mm bolts, and I'm going to go ahead and just do the top one first. And I'm just snugging it up. Again, you're putting plastic together with plastic, and there's a metal clip there, but I don't want to stress it out too much, so I'm not really torquing it down hard. I'm just snugging it up. And there we go. Nice and solid. And there's a 0.5mm movement here because the post is a little bit smaller than the hole for it. But we're all set. Problem solved. And then the last step, of course, is just go ahead and reinstall that plastic cover, and that just snaps back in. And we're all set. Nice and solid, ready to go. And obviously, if you were worried about the adjustment of this light, and I didn't change the adjusting screw, but you could pull this up to a wall or your garage door at night, put on your Foglights, and go ahead and adjust that screw to line them up correctly. But I'm not too worried about that. I'm just going to go ahead and make sure these things turn on, and then we're all done. And both of them are working like a champ. So folks, there you go. Nice simple repair. If you found this content valuable, please crush that like button as always. And if you're not subscribed, please hook a brother up and subscribe to my channel. Certainly appreciate you. And until next time, remember, friends don't let friends drive boring.